Hello, everybody. I'm DeGuan Watson, and this is the first time I'm actually doing a Transformers video. So I'd like to do a few more down the road, but some of you know me from some of my Magic stuff. I do a fair amount of streaming there, but I've gotten into the Transformers game here in the last couple of months, and I finally bought some packs a couple weeks ago. Me and my wife built some decks, and we're kind of thinking the game's pretty sweet, so I want to provide some content for it. Many of you probably also know me as Power Dragon, spelled the way it is right below, I guess right there. So yeah, feel free to follow me on Twitter or other social media. You're probably watching this on YouTube, so you're already here. Please subscribe and follow. But I find it very interesting that this past week we started getting a lot of information about the Wave 2 set for Transformers. And turns out combiners are pretty freaking sweet. It's also interesting too. It's so early, right? Like the set comes out in March, so we're not going to see anything till I believe March 1st, that Friday. So we're still about 6 weeks away before we get the launch of the set. And usually, Wizards of the Coast generally doesn't put out previews that far out. So I think one, as a community, we should be really happy that this is happening. But the other is it also means that they're paying a bit of attention. I think everybody got a little bit restless, maybe with the limited card count or something in the first set. This is going to kind of alleviate that a little bit and give us some other things to focus on and talk about for a little while, right? Like, that's actually pretty cool. But anyway, for those of you who don't know, Wave 2 is actually called Rise of the Combiners. The box is pretty sweet, and it's got a picture of Predaking, which is super awesome. That's what he looks like when you have all the cards together. It is freaking nuts. The cool part is each of those cards is a foldable card that's got two smaller cards. So it's interesting because you're going to have these cards that are going to get a lot of use, likely. I mean, we don't really know how common it is to be able to combine all your cards and get the big guy. So we'll see. I know this technology for Wizards has been used before with Duel Masters in the Japanese version of the card game. So it's not like they don't have experience on how to do this. I think one of the things I'm curious about is how these will look in boosters, right? Like, are they going to be thicker and heavier? So you'll be able to tell what's in the pack. For that matter, do we know even if the Enigmas will just come randomly? Or will an Enigma always be packaged with a particular one of the combiners to make sure you get enough of them? There's a lot of questions. I mean, I know they can control a lot of that if they wanted to in the production process. So I don't really know. I mean, I think those are some of the questions I don't think anybody's really asked or talked about yet. And that to me is a little bit, at least has some level of importance in the sense that we want to know kind of how easy it's going to be able to get the cards, put them together, the rarities of all the different cards, stuff like that. It's definitely going to change the way we play the game, too, when you're looking at how to just attack which bot and this, that, and the other. Like, you're going to be able to get stuff out of the KO pile, reconstruct your combiner, and now you're fighting this big giant thing with, I'm going to assume all of them are going to have between 30 and probably 42-ish hit points. So, how does that change the order of the way we do things? Or even on the defensive side, do you let your opponent spend some cards trying to take down one or two characters and then go to combine your stuff? Like, you're carrying over the hit points, so that's important, but like now you get way more damage in. When you're starting out at a 7 on a Predaking, and you get 5 weapon slots, which is crazy. So there's a lot going on with these cards. I think any of us at this stage that believe we have it all figured out and how things are going to work, it seems a little silly. I don't think we really know it all. I think there's a lot that we don't know, and I think this is going to open up a lot of doors. It's funny because here we were saying like, we wish there was more variety and wish there was more to do in the game, and then you get something like this that's going to flip things on its head for at least a good month or two while we kind of figure all this out. And another thing too, each of these individual bots that make up the combiner, so far all the ones we've seen for Predaking are all 5 stars. So, which, makes sense because you want to have the 25-star limit. But is it possible that we want to play decks with some of these that don't actually care about ever being part of a combiner? At just 5 stars, there may be builds where we can find 4 or 5 bot builds that use one of these, and that's totally acceptable. So I think that's a level that we need to explore as well, because if you find one that maybe you're playing a weapon heavy thing and you find one that focuses on weapons, or you need one that draws extra cards to help your deck out, or who knows what. I mean, there's a lot of reasons you could play different ones. But maybe that's something worth considering. That's one of the things I think we all got hyped about. Oh man, we're going to have combiners and we're going to get Constructicons and, and all that. But I don't think we really process, what does that do to just regular deck building? Other thing that's pretty cool is we get Windblade. And, well, one, this artwork's just sweet, And it's funny because I didn't know a lot about Windblade. I actually had to look it up. That I believe she was one of the fan-created or community-created characters. And, it's overall just sweet, sweet card. But she just straight up does 4 and then some to combiners. And that's pretty sweet. Yeah, the fact that she's a combiner hunter is pretty awesome. It's also cool that she's an Autobot and a plane, because we don't have a lot of those in the game right now. So that gives you another option if you want to try to go that route. It also gives you another plane just playing a plane build. I think it's probably worth exploring. I don't see too many teams that are made up of Autobots and Decepticons. This is one of those times where maybe it's worth it. Because the other half of her deck, other than just being able to attack the combiners and do extra damage, her alt mode is actually really interesting. I mean, she's expensive. She's 12 stars, so not cheap, but 14 health is huge, 5 attack in alt mode, 2 defense in both modes. I would say, she actually wants you to change your deck building, which I think is good. I think we've seen some discussions on a couple of the Facebook groups already about people saying, oh, well, if you're going to do that, you play all defense. You can do this, you play all attack. But I think that's still level 1 of deck building. That's the simplest option to kind of target. I think playing more builds where the words matter on the cards, I think ways to draw extra and cycle through your scrap pile is really big. I think there's way more to it than we've really explored at this point. And this card, when it flips to her alt mode, you reveal the top card of your deck. If it has battle icons of at least 2 different colors, you get to play it. So this makes you just want to play other cards that you may not be playing already. So anything that has 2 different color pips now is in consideration if Windblade's in your deck. Especially if it's just a regular action. That in and of itself is pretty cool, because then you're not even worried about what slots are taken up by upgrades already on your characters. You just get to do whatever the card says. So it's just bonus actions to play, which is really cool. So I like a lot of what this card's doing. I mean, the fact that it's 12 stars is a little bit difficult. It's going to be really hard to squeeze that into some different builds, but just overall what it's doing, really sweet. And the artwork's really awesome on both sides. Blue Streak, pretty cool. This was revealed by Wazzy, actually, so if those of you who don't follow him, look for him on YouTube. He has a bunch of really cool videos. Probably already becoming one of the better known in the Transformers TCG community. But yeah, so would just be rehashing a lot of what he said already about this card. But again, this is another card that actually wants you to change your deck building, which I think is very cool. I think it's saying, hey, if you want to get the most out of this card, you need to be playing multiple different color pips in your deck. So when this card attacks and you flip at least a white, an orange, and a blue, it flips to its alt mode after the attack. So that's important on a card like this because he has a huge attack in bot mode of 5. Not so much as far as hit points or whatever, but it's average for a guy that's only 5 stars. But having no defense can be a real risk. But the fact that you're attacking with at least 5, not counting any bonuses or weapons or anything else you have on them, if you flip one of everything, well, now you flip to the alt mode that has 4 defense, which is definitely higher than average. So Blue Streak is a really competitive card. I mean, it's not one that you can really just overlook or give a glancing pass at. And it's a car, so it fits into the other car decks that already exist. So maybe you replace one. Which one, I don't know. I mean, I have to go and look. I mean, 8 stars does give you some flexibility to fit into a few different builds, which I really like a lot. But it's also interesting, too, that he's doing a lot of flipping back and forth, which is pretty cool. So it's an easy way to get a flip without having to spend a card or an action, to get you there, which is something I think can't be ignored either. But it's a very cool card. I think so far I'm appreciating the designs of each of the bots that we've gotten. Like, they're all forcing you to play differently than we play now, which nothing wrong with that. I think that's always a benefit. I think it opens up the doors for creativity. It makes things just a little more interesting game to game, knowing that your opponents aren't just doing the same things. I think this is the type of card that makes me look at the set and go, man, like, I think we're really going to appreciate this more the longer the set's out. Going to the next card, we have yet another Megatron. But not a surprise. I think when you have these key characters like Megatron, like Optimus Prime, like Bumblebee, we're going to get a lot of those. So it's not a shocker in the least. But the best part about this Megatron is that he's a great way to draw cards. Like, I think that's one of the things some of the decks struggle with right now, is they can go through their early turns, but then they kind of start running out of gas a little bit. If your opponent's found a way to resist stuff or clear up heal some damage, like, you can just struggle a bit, because now you're just getting the 1 card a turn, and your hand's only got 1 or 2 cards. But the fact that you're cycling through, not only that, like, it's cool that both halves work very cleanly together, right? So when you attack with his bot mode, you get to scrap an upgrade from your hand and draw 2 cards. So if you already have your slots taken up, you can't play another armor, can't play another weapon, whatever it happens to be. Like, you can just get rid of it, draw 2 cards. And then when you flip to your alt mode, you get to play an upgrade. So if you did get a card that fills your other slot, you now get to play it for free. So, like, that's pretty cool. And the other thing that's neat too is you can always flip him even if you have no intention of playing the card on him. Same thing with the upgrade. It doesn't say it has to be played on Megatron. So you can be flipping this Megatron back and forth to either load your hand or just put a bonus card on something else that you're planning to attack with that may not actually be Megatron. And at 14 health, this is a stout card. Also interesting that he's only 10. I thought he was going to be more when I first looked at his stats, of being a 4-14-2 and a 3-14-3. I thought this was going to probably come in at like a 12, but the fact that it's only a 10 is pretty cool. So it gives you a little bit of wiggle room, and it's, again, maybe it's one of those situations we talked about too, where you end up playing 2 10s and a 5, and maybe that's where one of these new bots comes in that is one of the combiners, right? Like, so who knows? Like, but this card, really, really cool. I think it's really strong. It doesn't hit insanely hard, so that part is a little bit lacking, but at the same time, you can play it in a build that you're loading on extra weapons and whatnot to be able to do more. So that's another way to look at it too. I mean, the card overall, really sweet. I think it gives you another way to go a little bit with the tank build, because again, he's still a tank in this version. It's funny because there's been a lot of discussion on if we should get other versions of Megatron, but who knows? Maybe we'll, maybe we won't. I think right now you probably won't, just because of the version of the bots and artwork they're choosing to go with. We'll probably always have them in a tank mode, but I think overall the card's pretty sweet, and I expect to see quite a bit of play on it. Looking at the next card, going down the list, we have Bolt of Lightning. This is one that came through on Twitter. I believe Ken Nagel put it on the official Transformers Twitter page. And it's interesting because it shows you that this card also has a star, which means if you're short a couple of stars on your team build, well, now you can get those back elsewhere. Because I think that was a little bit of a struggle when I first started looking at cards in the game, I was thinking, well, what happens if I only have 22 points or 23 points and I want to play these characters and there's no room to put anything else in? It's like, oh, well, now this solves that problem, right? And you can even purposely go below 25 to say, okay, I'm only going to play these two. That leaves me 5 points. I want to spend those 5 on whatever. And again, this is another one of those deck building things that's going to be completely different, right? Because if I'm looking at my opponent's team and he lays them out, and I'm like, okay, he's only at 20 points, what does the rest of his deck look like, right? Did he go a full set of lightning bolts, or bolt of lightnings, I should say, or something else, right? Or did he play something that's 2 stars or 3 stars or who knows what? Like this I love, right? Like the fact that I can now start looking at my opponent's builds and not know what's in their deck. Like maybe not even have any idea. On top of the fact that we'll be adding another pile of battle cards that come with Wave 2 as well. So overall, this is a really cool idea. I mean, it's something that I hadn't even really considered when we were deck building and really kind of exploring the game for a couple of days. But now that it's there, I'm like, oh, well, this feels a little bit obvious. Like now that we've seen it. Also interesting to note that this card's only an uncommon, so it's not even rare. So there's likely, if I were guessing from a design standpoint, there may be 1 or 2 at common, 1 or 2 at uncommon, and probably 2 or 3 at rare that have some star value that allow you to do, make up those different points, which is pretty cool. I mean, I think it's neat. Again, I think anything that's pushing us to build differently, to be more creative, anything that adds variety, makes the games less stale. I'm behind all that. I think that's fantastic. So yeah, I think overall this set stands to be extremely cool. I think it's something completely different than where a lot of us expected it was going to go so quickly. I think we were kind of all thinking about, well, when do we get a shockwave? When do we get this creature or this character? When do we get references to these other things we like? Like, at some point, are we going to get Beast Wars stuff or whatever? But they went a whole different way and said, not only are we going to give you combiners in a different way just to build your teams and play, but we're also going to get new ways to build decks. And that is huge. I think that changes a lot. And I'm looking forward to it. But anyway, this was my first go around at putting together a Transformers TCG video. I'd like to do in the future some different things that are probably covering some deck lists and trying a few different options to see just what the crowd wants. So thanks for listening, and hopefully we will see you again.